And we'll go to the next bill, 5557, sponsored by Deputy Speaker Lima. It's an act related to criminal offenses and weapons. It provides that any person 18 years of age who is issued a license may carry a stun gun. This act would also add tasers to the definition of firearms and would provide for an appeal for denial of an application for a permit for such a device. Do we have Deputy Speaker on the line? If not, oh, you're number 2. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
As always, Chairman, you do a very good job of describing what the legislation does. The key part of this is to bring us in compliance with Supreme Court with judicial rulings with stun guns. Currently, right now, Rhode Island is involved in a court case over this issue, and it's been found, I think we go back the other direction in terms of number of states that allow and don't allow stun guns and tasers. We're one of only 2 currently that have laws on the books barring them. And this would bring us in line with the other 48 states. I think Hawaii is the other one, so I guess it's a East Coast, West Coast thing. But again, this just brings us in compliance with current precedent dealing with the Second Amendment and fixing a loophole within our law. And on the appeals process, it just recognizes, again, the decisions in Heller and McDonald have changed the way in which courts view the Second Amendment, and specifically concealed carry and things of that nature. So what it does, it just provides a more elaborate, well, not elaborate, but it provides an actual proper appeals process within our system for folks that are looking to appeal a denial of a permit of this nature.
Thank you. If there are no questions, we'll go on to the next one. Okay, 5558, sponsored by Representative Perez. It's an act related to criminal offenses involving weapons, and it allows those persons with concealed carry permits issued by other states to carry upon their person weapons in Rhode Island, provided that the issuing state recognizes and gives reciprocity to the Rhode Island permits. I know Representative Perez isn't here if he's not on the line, so we'll move to the next bill. It's sponsored by Chairman Solomon. It's an act related to criminal offenses and weapons. It allows reciprocal concealed carry permits from out of state to be valid in Rhode Island, which is either authorized by the Attorney General or subject to other reciprocal restrictions. And I see him on the Hollywood Squares depiction of all the folks there. So can we? Is he up?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm here.
You are on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This act would allow the Attorney General to enter in agreements with other states to recognize a concealed handgun permit as valid. This act would authorize the state of Rhode Island to recognize and honor a concealed weapon permit from out of state, provided the license holder is 21 years of age or older. The reciprocal state or county provides a means of 24 hours instantaneous verification. The permit holder has in their immediate possession the valid out-of-state permit along with the state-issued photo identification, and the individual is subject to the same laws or restrictions with respect to carrying a weapon as a resident of Rhode Island. If Rhode Island passes this bill, we would not be alone. Many states provide for reciprocity of concealed carry handgun permits. In fact, Rhode Island is arguably an outlier in not accepting permits from other states. There's a process for obtaining a concealed carry permit in other states. These individuals are properly vetted, and if a person is prohibited from owning a firearm, they cannot and will not be able to obtain a permit. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the sponsor? All right, seeing none, thank you, Chairman. We'll move to the next bill, 5726, sponsored by Chair Diaz. It's an act related to criminal offenses and weapons. It defines rifle and shotgun and makes it unlawful to possess a loaded rifle or shotgun in public, subject to the various exceptions for law enforcement and other authorized individuals. Is Chair Diaz available? She's not? All right, we'll move to the next bill. I'm going to skip Representative Casey's bill. He asked me to hold that for a little while. He was otherwise occupied. Representative Cardillo's is next, 5730. I'm sorry?
Representative Cardillo.
Okay. It's an act related to criminal offenses and weapons. It authorizes the Attorney General to enter into reciprocal agreements with Massachusetts and/or Connecticut for handgun permits. And I guess the sponsor is on his way in. Guess I should fill the dead air, huh?
He's not there anymore.
Oh, he's not there? Okay. Then we'll move on to the next bill. This is Representative Place, who was just here and
We
left.
have Representative Tanzi.
Oh, Tanzi's out here? Okay. Let's get to Representative Tanzi. Yeah, grab him next. Thanks. This is Representative Tanzi's bill. It's an act related to criminal offenses and weapons. It increases the age from 18 to 21 years for lawful sale of firearms or ammunition. Full-time law enforcement, state marshals, and members of the U.S. military be exemptions from those prohibitions. The sponsor is here. She's in the House. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman and members of the committee. So, as stated, this bill would increase from 18 to 20 the minimum age for all firearms and ammunition in the state. Currently, the state and the feds have the minimum age for purchase at 21. The law in Rhode Island was enacted in 1959 and 1968 for the federal statute. I don't know what made Rhode Island enact the law in 1959, but the feds did so in response to the assassination of President Kennedy, the Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, and the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And after many years of trying, this was the impetus for the changes that were made. I think we're at a point in time where we ourselves have seen enough horror and been exposed to enough shootings with children under the age of 21 being the ones who are doing the shooting, that it's time to enact this. In 2018, after Parkland, then President Trump said, quote, "You can't buy a handgun at 18, 19, or 20. You have to wait until you're 21. You could buy the weapon used at this horrible shooting at 18. Raising the age, the minimum age, is just common sense." A recent JAMA study showed, of all school shootings, showed that 89% of the shooters were under 22, 70% were current students, and 15% were former students. There are exemptions made in this legislation for hunting. It is not a crime to possess the weapon under the age of 21, only the sale. So if you were to be hunting with an adult, you would not be subject to any ramifications, even just possessing it, even with ill intent, it would not be an additional charge. I think the onus should be on those who sell the guns, and the legislation reflects that. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for the sponsor? Representative Naray.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative Tanzi. So, did you just say, and again, I apologize if I didn't hear correctly, that it is okay for someone 18 to 21 to hunt without an adult?
With an adult.
With an adult. So, which this changes, correct? Because presently an 18-year-old can hunt on their own?
No, it's current statute.
That's what I'm just trying to
So on
clarify.
page 2 of the
I'm
bill-
not familiar, I'll be honest with you, I'm not totally familiar with the statute, so.
Yeah, so on page 2 of this bill, lines 1 through 5, it shall not apply to minors engaged in lawful hunting activity under the supervision of a parent or guardian or qualified adult, minors participating in Reserve Officer Training Corps programs, ceremonial parades, competitive and target shooting, participants in state militia activities, and minors participating in basic firearms education programs.
Perfect, thank you. I wasn't sure if you said differently, that's why I was asking. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions of the sponsor? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next bill. I see,
If I can say one more thing,
Oh, sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Expected there to be more questions, but I believe that this was a loophole that was unintended, and that when we passed this law in 1959, there was no such thing as the type of military style, although I'll retract that statement so that we won't, this type of long gun did not exist. And I think that had that happened, had the same type of weapons that we have today been in existence in 1959 when the state of Rhode Island decided to put this law into effect, I think that it would have been all guns. It was clear that there was a determination made at that point in time that certain guns were considered to be too dangerous for those who are 21, below 21 to have, and I think that this is just an opportunity now to correct that oversight and to close that loophole, because clearly the intent of the state of Rhode Island was to keep the more dangerous styles of guns away from those under the age of 21, and that was back in 1959. And I think here today in 2021, we have a great opportunity in front of us to close the loophole. Thank you.
Representative Place.
I just want to, again, we deal in facts and stuff like that. Firearms of the nature, functionality, while the look of them, the black, the color and the plastic nature of the firearms that are in existence today in question, similar firearms, just as deadly, did exist back in 1959. So the idea that our predecessors somehow made a mistake, I'm just going to go ahead and disagree with. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Not in 1959.
The M1 Grand is a very similar and probably more deadly weapon than the M16 is today.
And it is a predecessor to the AR-15. I understand. I know the history.
So again, they existed in 1959 and were readily available for purchase.
I don't
At the
believe in
time.
1959 they were.
Well, again, we're going to agree to disagree. Thank you.
I reviewed the research this morning, and the sales of them, I will happily bring that to you because it was fascinating to me, because you can literally look at the serial numbers on the guns and see, the date of manufacture, and you can see how many were sold in each year. And it was fascinating to see how the proliferation of them didn't occur until around 1977, when the patent expired for Colt, and more manufacturers were able to mass market them for more cheaply and make them more easily available to the public.
But the actual mass sale and actual availability at the time are two different concepts. Again, I just think it's wrong that we sit here in 2021 and try to go back and get into the minds of our predecessors and try to claim what it is that they were intending when they did this stuff.
Okay, any further questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, thank you very much. Roberta, if you could get Representative Cardillo, I guess he's...
His bill is very similar to Representative Solomon's,
Oh, okay.
so
So we can place Representative Cardillo's bill in play. It's an act related to the weapons, and it authorizes the AG to enter into reciprocal agreements with Mass and Connecticut. So, okay, that's in play. Now it's Representative Place's turn. Dave, your bill 5882, it's an act related to weapons as well, and it amends the definition of firearms to include tasers, as well as stun guns and et cetera.
I'll be perfectly honest, Mr. Chairman, this is more of a matter of pride, me introducing this legislation. It is pretty much an exact match to Representative Lima's bill that I introduced earlier. I just introduced it in 2019. So again, it was a matter of pride on my part to introduce it again, and I'll stand by the testimony and the presentation I gave then. for this as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next bill, 5942, sponsored by Representative Rangelin Vassar. It is, again, a bill talking about criminal offenses and weapons, and it prohibits schools from offering employment incentives or bonuses to teachers on the condition that the teacher either is or will become a licensed to carry a weapon. I don't see Representative Rangelin Vassar here. I don't expect her here. So that's now in play. Representative Felix.
And we also need to get Representative Williams on the phone for her bill.
Yeah. Representative Felix, she obviously is in. Yeah, could you see if she's in there? And we can put Representative Noray's bill in play right now, which is House Bill 5971. It's an act related to criminal offenses and weapons. It creates an appeal for applicants denied a concealed firearm permit, firearm transfer with the right to Superior Court hearing and all records deemed as non-public records.
Thank you, Chairman. It would create an appeals process, as you said, for those who were an applicant who was denied a concealed carry permit, a firearms transfer or purchase. It would put in place a process which presently does not exist, so due process for someone that was denied. It would allow them to meet with a local chief of police or the attorney general to try to resolve the issue through mediation between the two of them, and then if not, it would guarantee them an option to go to court. At present, the only option an individual has that is denied in this instance is for them to go to the Rhode Island Supreme Court, and the cost is astronomical and not affordable for the average person, and there is no defined date that you will get, so there's no assurance that you will be afforded due process. This law would allow for that process to actually take place. I think it is a good bill for due process and would allow that to go forward. So thank you.
Any questions for the sponsor? Yes, Jose.
Thank you, Rep. Admittedly, I don't know too much about the concealed firearm process. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about what is required to I guess, successfully receive a concealed firearm, and who is this bill, who are you thinking about? Like, who is this bill for? Because I imagine that, there's folks who need to have a concealed firearm. So I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about that process and who you were thinking about in terms of helping with this bill.
Certainly, thank you. Great question. So, also not an expert in the process, right? So the process presently, there's two different options for concealed carry permits. You can get one through your town, or you can get one through the Attorney General's office. So those are the two concealed carry permit processes. A chief can shall issue, right? And if they do not, then they're supposed to give you a reason why. So obviously you have background checks. We passed legislation last year to allow the towns to not now do the checks from the gun shops, so they can now deny based on, say, issues where they may had with the office, with the individual who's trying to purchase a gun, right? They could substantiate that as a reason to deny. So again, we're just trying, if you are denied, we're just trying to give you a process for which you can appeal that denial and get the information as to why you were denied, other than the obvious reason of failing a background check. Does that kind of answer your question? Not trying to loophole any of the requirements of getting, independent letters from people to, give you character statements, right? Not trying to, just trying to, if you're denied, there is presently no process to ask why.
No, that is very responsive. I appreciate that. For some reason, I was under the impression that you needed a particular reason. It's one thing to apply for a gun permit and another to apply for a concealed permit. And I was under the impression that you needed like a good reason to have a concealed permit. It sounds like that's not the case.
You would think so, but there have been people that have just been denied them. And again, their only option is the Rhode Island Supreme Court, and it's unaffordable.
I see.
For the average person, right?
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Okay, if that concludes any questions for the sponsor, we'll go to the next bill. Representative Felix is here. It's an act related to criminal offenses and weapons. It defines rifle and shotguns as weapons and makes unlawful possession of a loaded rifle/firearm in public, with exceptions punishable by up to 5 years and a $5,000 fine. Representative Felix, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So under current Rhode Island law, it is illegal to carry a loaded rifle or shotgun in or any vehicle or conveyance, and while upon or along any public highway, road, lane, or trail within the state. So effectively, what this bill does is that it eliminates the words in or on any vehicle or conveyance from the law, thereby making the carrying of shotguns and rifles, open carry of shotguns and rifles prohibited, with various exceptions for law enforcement, military, and for hunting. So it's very simple. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to respond.
Any questions for the sponsor? Great job, thanks. Okay, next is 5972, sponsored by Whip Chippendale. It's an act related to criminal offenses and weapons. It permits in Rhode Island residents 21 and older to carry a concealed gun without a permit. Representative Chippendale asked me to put it in play, so I can answer any questions about it, but if there are none, then I'll move on to the next bill. Yes, and the next bill is, why don't we put Chairwoman Williams on? What? Yeah. All right, while we're getting her up, Leader, your bill is up. It's 5973. It's an act related to criminal offenses and weapons, and it permits the open and concealed carry of weapons by any person in the act of evacuating the area pursuant to an order of the governor or a local authority under Chapter 15, Title 30. I'm sure you can explain which statute and what it means.
Yeah, I don't know if it takes much more than your explanation. The purpose of the bill is that if people are ordered to leave their home, they should be able to take their firearms with them. They should not be deprived of a fundamental right by an order they have no choice but to comply with. They shouldn't have to leave their Second Amendment rights at home. As you know, most people one of the few places they can lawfully possess a firearm is in their home or place of business, and if they can't be there, we shouldn't be depriving them of that right. They should be able to take their firearms with them to protect their family. Who knows what's going to happen during a state of emergency? We have plenty of laws on the books that deal with someone improperly using firearms that would cover them as they were leaving with their firearms and where they would end up with their firearms. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, we will go to, is Chairwoman Williams is on? Sure. Let's get her up here. This is Chair Williams' bill. It's an act related to criminal offenses and weapons. It requires firearm sellers to require purchaser to execute medical authorization/release forms for release of records relating to addiction, alcoholism, mental health illness for a period of up to 5 years prior to purchase. Chair Williams, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Judiciary Committee. Wonderful day outside. Yes, 5381. First and foremost, I would like to say this is in no way trying to impede on anyone's privacy, medical privacy in any way. But it's in place and it's in place. But as we all have been witnessing, the types of gun violence that have been encountered, and many times people are stressed out, many times there's hallucination, there's an array of reasons. However, this the intent of this is to just add another form of safeguard, because if someone realistically has an issue and we are not recognizing that, or we don't know how to recognize and what to do about it, this will help. The authorization form would release medical records relating to the purchases, addiction, and any other controlled substance, alcoholism, or mental health illness for a period of 5 years preceding the application for the purchase of a firearm. Plain and simple. This bill will serve as another line of defense, along with our red flag law, to keep firearms out of the hands of individuals who should not have access to them. So it doesn't have anything to do with the individuals who know how to handle it and does not have any type of mental illness. It's not stressed out because of the daily life and have the weapon at hand to try to take some folks out. And that's my testimony for the afternoon.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Any questions of the sponsor? Yes, Whip Filippi.
I don't know, more of a comment or a question. Hi, Representative Williams, Chairman Williams.
Hi,
Nice to
love.
see-
Hi, Brett.
It's good to hear you. I'm just concerned about the bill. Are we asking firearms dealers to interpret medical records?
No. That's not the intent. The form is supposed to be developed with the General Assembly and the Department of Health. But right now, an intent. It's definitely not the best piece of legislation with regards to how it's written. But certainly, no, we're not asking the firearm dealer to interpret medical records at all. They just need to have a form that needs to be provided, and who that form goes to would be something else, to someone else, not him.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, thank you, Chair Williams. And we'll
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. We'll go to the next bill, sponsored by my wing here, Chairwoman McEntee. It's an act related to weapons again, and it defines electric arm, subjects to various protections of firearms, removes stun guns from the prohibited weapons list. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. All this does is it takes stun gun out of the category of weapons other than firearms that are prohibited. So it actually does what I believe Representative Place's bill wants to do, and it places it in the regulated category with firearms. So, and it defines electric arm, which means a handheld device that transmits an electric charge from the device of a person, including a stun gun or a taser. So the Attorney General asked me to put this bill in, and I don't think it should have too much opposition, but I see Doc looking at me over here. But anyway, all it does, Doc, is regulate it as a firearm. It doesn't, it's no longer in the prohibited list. So this might be working your way, which is astounding that I would put it in. No one else would put it in, quite frankly.
And then again, maybe not, because then it has to be, it's not really a firearm.
Well, you can argue with the Attorney General on that one. Because he wants this bill. I think it's a good bill. If our choices are if we can't ban it completely, then we should regulate it. So that's why I agreed to put it in. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll go to the last of the bills put in play, sponsored by Chairman Casey. It's an act related to State Affairs and Government, Department of Attorney General. It requires the Office of the Attorney General to issue a report containing the total case, oh, here it is, yeah. Containing the total cases charged with a firearm in all Rhode Island courts, and a list of cases charged with firearms which have been disposed of during a calendar year. Chair Casey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee members, for taking the time, especially on this, what will turn out to be an extremely long day and evening for all of you. I appreciate very much the work that you all do. as my colleagues. So, the bill, which we are calling the Gun Crimes Report, would effect if this bill has been passed in the past. We are amending it to get some specific, have the Attorney General's office give us specific information with regard to gun crimes in Rhode Island specifically. The added language that we have states that the report shall contain the total number of cases with respect to charges involving a firearm in all courts in the state of Rhode Island filed during the calendar year. The report shall also contain all of the cases with respect to charges involving a firearm which have been disposed of during the calendar year. Within these categories, by trial, without jury trial, on plea of guilty or nolo contendere, by a null pros, and the number of non-warranted and warranted indictments and informations pending at the end of the year. The report shall show the number of offenders in these cases punished by sentences or imprisonment, or by the payment of a fine, or by both fine and imprisonment, or by suspended or deferred sentence or probation with sentences and fines specifically specified in each instance. The report shall be subdivided by and specifically include each court docket number, along with the make, model, and caliber of firearm utilized, involved, and/or seized. The reported firearm information shall also include if the firearm was stolen, altered, has an obliterated serial number, and shall indicate if the firearm was a 3D printed firearm or a ghost firearm. As we continue, as you folks continue to deliberate and hear testimony, I think the impetus for this bill in the past years, and as it has evolved, it's important to make decisions based on fact. This report will allow Rhode Islanders and will allow us as legislators to get the actual facts of what is happening here in Rhode Island, and if necessary, and if we deem necessary, we can make necessary changes to our firearm laws. As Rep. Filippi, Leader Filippi stated earlier, I believe we have the fourth lowest amount of gun crimes in all states, and we may be somewhere in the ninth as far as the amount of gun laws and the toughness of the gun laws that we do have. I will certainly like to entertain any questions from the committee, and I just do have a few comments on some of the legislation that's been presented prior, if you'll allow me the leeway.
Unfortunately, I can't. We
Okay.
have some pretty strict rules on this. So are there any questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, Chairman Casey, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee. I appreciate the time.
So now we get to the second part of our process here. Doc, you wanted to say something about a bill that had already come and gone with reference to no one testifying?
No, in reference to 5942 regarding Representative Wrangler Vassal's bill, I was just curious if anyone knew the impetus behind this bill. I'm just curious if anyone would know if there are school districts right now that actually do provide an employment incentive or bonus if a teacher gets their carry permit. Because that's the way I read this.
Yes.
There is.
Well, no, that's the way it reads.
Okay.
And I'm unaware of any such
So I'm wondering
teacher
what
contract.
I'm wondering what the impetus would be. This must be something that the only thing I can think of is someone somewhere may have been concerned that what the previous president of the United States said about arming teachers, which I'm vehemently against arming teachers. I'm vehemently against arming teachers as being a prerequisite or any type of part of an educational curriculum. That's wrong. Okay,
Right.
They're there to teach. They're not there to police. There are other methods of doing that. Okay, so let me make that very clear. The reason why I'm asking this is, the only thing I can think of is perhaps someone somewhere thought that the former president, who will never be president again, was trying to either incentivize or have teachers become, obtain their carry permits. And that's the only thing I can think of why this bill was put in, unless it's somebody knows why this bill was put in.
I think we have an informed
that'd be great.
rep here.
Yes, Chairman Corvese, I think I can answer your question. There
Thank you.
has been talk around the country, and I believe in Rhode Island, there have been people who suggested that the possibility of training teachers to be armed and provide protection in schools, that could be a good idea, and that the teachers should be paid some sort of bonus recognizing the additional time. I have heard that suggestion a number of different times, and I believe that's the reason why
Okay, that's,
Representative Ranglin Vassal introduced it as
thank you,
peremptory.
thank you, Representative Agello. I had a feeling that was the reason. If a person like me doesn't like it, I can't see this, I don't think this would ever see the light of day, as far as that happening. I would never preclude a teacher on their personal time if they wish to become a carry permit individual. But as far as making it a formal part of their teaching duties, I think that's really not a good idea, so.
Perhaps then, Chairman Corvese, this is a gun control bill that you and I would agree on.
As long as this cannot be, if you pardon the expression, bastardized into something that it's not meant to be, if it is what it is on its face, I don't have a problem with it. I would not want it to be where an individual teacher of their own volition outside of the classroom wishes to get a carry permit. I wouldn't want that impacted on the teacher.
That's not in the bill.
Okay.
That's not what the bill.
Thank you. Well, we agree, Representative Agello. It only took me 23 years. Thank you.
Oh, there have been a few times.
Yeah, there.
Yes, Dave?
Am I right that all the bills are introduced at this point?
They're all in play, and I'm just about to announce what the next stage is.
All right.
And then we'll go from there.
Do you want me to go ahead? We had spoken about this petition.
Oh,
that had
that's
been
right,
presented to me,
yes.
if you don't
You
mind.
have a petition
I do.
that's been signed by some 10,000 people?
10,011 to be exact. And again, I just want to announce, like I said, I'm going to read off what it is that they, actually, you know what? In essence, it's 10,011 people that oppose all of the gun control measures that have been presented to this committee today. And there's a synopsis of what it says on the front. If any committee members would like to see it, I'll go ahead and pass it around.
It will be shared with them as far as what the question was that 10,011 people agreed to.
Yep. So I'm just going
So
to
that will be an exhibit given to the clerk of the committee, and Roberta, if you would accept that as part of the record.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr.
if I may, I actually was not aware of this. Would it be permissible for you to at least allow Representative Place to
read the question
or
or
at least read the question or the salient point of the petition?
Sure.
I will. Again, as the petition reads, year after year, countless hours are wasted on dismantling the Second Amendment under the guise of common sense based on twisted information from special interest groups. These bills are motivated by a progressive agenda and blatantly focused on stripping law-abiding citizens of their rights and property and weakening the foundation of our country. Firearms owners are portrayed as the enemy, treated as criminals, and told they are the minority, when in fact we are a valuable resource. We are families, single moms and dads, business owners, hard workers, veterans, young and old, all diversities and ethnicities. The Second Amendment does not discriminate. We are stewards of the environment and significant part of our local economy. We ask that you come to the table to address the real problems existing. Existing laws do not enforce. Plea bargains and early releases of criminals do not use firearms in the commission of crimes. We, the people, law-abiding citizens of the state of Rhode Island, have been victimized by the rhetoric long enough, and we want our voices heard. We strongly oppose all new gun legislation that will restrict law-abiding gun owners from exercising their right to keep and bear arms. Signed by your constituents.
Thank you very much. All right, that is now a part of the record, and we'll move to this next stage. Each side, for lack of better description, those that oppose the gun control bills and those that support the gun control bills have designated, pursuant to the rules, 4 people that, again, for purposes of my conversation here, will be considered experts in the fields that they represent, either supporting or opposing. So I will take them alternately, starting with those that support and then going to those that oppose. And each one of the experts will have 3 minutes to state their case. If there are any questions that the members have, then there'll be an overrun of the 3 minutes in the sense of answering that question. So, with the first witness is Dee Goldstein. I think I'd seen her. Yes, there she is. From the speaking on behalf of the Attorney General. Dee, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman. My name is Dee Goldstein. I'm the Deputy Attorney General. With me here today is our BCI Chief, Ed Troiano, who's also testified previously, and he's a retired ATF Special Agent, veteran law enforcement agent who has been enforcing firearms and criminal laws in this state for many years. Chairman Craven and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify today in support of the Attorney General's gun safety legislation. I would like to begin by thanking all of the sponsors of the Attorney General's bill, too many to name here, given my limited time period. You've been fighting for these laws for a long time, and your leadership and support is very much appreciated. I also want to thank Governor McKee, Treasurer Magaziner, and Secretary Gorbea for their support and testimony, as well as our law enforcement partners and many advocates who will be testifying today. BCI Chief Troiano and I were going to split our testimony, but in the interest of time, I will be summarizing the legislation that I'm going to be testifying in support of today, and Chief Troiano will be available to respond to any questions the committee might have. The first 2 bills I would like to quickly address are H5556 and H5554, the assault weapons ban and high-capacity magazine limits. The assault weapon ban addresses shotguns with a fixed magazine capacity of more than 6 rounds or that has the ability to accept a detachable magazine, semi-automatic rifles with fixed magazine capacity of more than 10 rounds or that has the ability to accept a detachable magazine and possess another assault weapons feature, for example, a pistol grip, a semi-automatic pistol that has the ability to accept a detachable magazine and also has another assault weapons feature, for example, an ammunition magazine that attaches to the pistol outside of the pistol grip. The bill provides for the grandfathering of lawfully possessed assault weapons at the time of enactment. 5554 bans the possession of magazines with a capacity to hold more than 10 rounds. The premise behind these bills is plain. These weapons and high-capacity magazines carry an unreasonable risk of high casualty events. They are the weapons of choice in mass shootings. The data is compelling that, although assault weapons make a small percentage of all gun deaths overall, when they are used, when high-capacity magazines are used, the number of deaths and injuries are double and triple than when they are not. Representative Caldwell provided a number of examples, and I believe that members of the committee are aware of these cases, so I'm not going to go through them now. When Governor Mitt Romney signed this legislation into law in Massachusetts, he said, and I quote, "They are not made for recreation or self-defense. They are instruments of destruction with the sole purpose of hunting down and killing people." These measures are important because we do not want our police officers to be outgunned, And we want to give both law enforcement and civilians an opportunity to react, flee, or interfere with an active shooter when that shooter has to stop to reload. Seconds count in those instances. In February of this year, a man walked into a Louisiana gun store, and in the span of less than 2 minutes, he fired 32 rounds in his possession before store employees fatally shot him. He had an extended magazine, and he just went to town on the people in that store before anybody had a chance to react. 2 people died and another was injured. Last August in Dayton, Ohio, 26 people were shot in the span of 30 seconds.
Adi, you've got about 30 seconds.
17 were injured. The shooter was fatally shot by the police 32 seconds after the first shots were fired. He was carrying a semi-automatic Anderson Manufacturing AM-15 in a pistol configuration with a shortened barrel, with .223 ammunition, and equipped with a 100-round drum magazine. Our sister states of Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, California, Hawaii, and DC have long banned these military-style assault rifles and pistols, and those laws have been held constitutional. Those states, plus Colorado and Vermont, have also banned large-capacity magazines, most at 10 rounds, which is the number we propose here. Colorado pegged the number
Mr.
at
Chairman,
50.
I'm going to formally object.
Yes. Adi, can you hear me? The time is up. I have to provide for any questions that the members might have. If there are there any questions? Yes, David.
To the Assistant Attorney General. You referenced the Massachusetts law again. Have you read the law in comparison to the legislation that's before us?
Your Honor, yes. I'm familiar that there are a number of variations of the assault weapons ban throughout the country. Ours is based more closely on the New Jersey statute. Massachusetts lists a number of firearms in addition to relying on the features test. So yes, there are variations between the law proposed here as well as the Massachusetts version. I'll note that previously there have been other versions of this bill that have been proposed, some which were more closely modeled in Massachusetts, and those have likewise been opposed.
And to your knowledge, the laws that you referenced, have they been adjudicated pre or post Heller and McDonald? Not including the Massachusetts. Again, I would recognize the Massachusetts ban is entirely different than what we're dealing here, but any legislation that is modeled after, anything that this legislation is modeled off of, are you aware of any of them that have actually been adjudicated since the decisions of Heller and McDonald?
Yes, there have been, many of these decisions have been adjudicated both before and after Heller and McDonald. Heller 2 is in DC Circuit. As you probably know, that has been, that case in the DC Circuit has upheld the ban on assault weapons ban in Washington, D.C. Most recently, there's been a case in the Vermont Supreme Court that has upheld Vermont's ban on large capacity magazines over 10 in, they peg it at 10 for long guns and 15 at pistols. And that decision just recently came down. There was another recent decision out of Massachusetts just last year. And so 4th Circuit, 7th Circuit, 10th Circuit, 1st and 2nd Circuit. These cases have all been argued. And yes, there are differences among the laws, but that is not the deciding issue in those cases.
Well, I'm obviously going to beg to differ. Mike, okay, so let me clarify the question. So to your knowledge, has any legislation similar to this or any law that has been passed similar to this, down to the functionality, not just the features, that has actually been adjudicated? Just we'll go to it. We'll go to the Supreme Court. Has any of that taken place yet?
The Supreme Court, after Heller, in Miller, the Supreme Court upheld the ban on short-barreled shotguns. The Supreme Court has not yet spoken on an assault weapon ban or a high-capacity magazine ban. There have been multiple cases in numerous circuit courts that have upheld these types of legislation, and there have been variations among the various state courts, and they have been all upheld as constitutional.
All right, if there are no other questions, oh, you do? I'm sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Adi, can you hear me?
I can.
Can I ask you, does any of the bills that you testified on today restrict the ability of a Rhode Island citizen to purchase a pistol, a shotgun, or a long gun for defense of themselves or their homes as long as they comply with the existing law?
No, they do not. Thank you for that, Representative Knight. None of these bills address the core interest of the Second Amendment, which is that of self-defense and defense of the home. These bills all, to quote Judge Krause, who perhaps more than any other jurist in the state has had a front row seat to the impact of gun violence in the state. And he said that there is no dispute that reducing catastrophic gun violence and the harm caused by the misuse of firearms, whether by accident or design, are more than just important government interests, they are also compelling and paramount ones. The only dispute, he said, is whether that particular statute he was talking about are reasonably adapted to address these interests. And he answered his own questions. Question, they are. And these laws are reasonable regulations that substantially address the important government objective to protect the health and safety of all Rhode Islanders.
Any further questions? Did one over here? No? Okay, Dave?
We'll go ahead and read decisions. I may pronounce this wrong. It's something I've always read. I've never actually said it out loud, but Catano versus Massachusetts. The Judicial Supreme Court of Massachusetts, in taking up the stun gun ban, that was part of the reasons why myself and Representative Lima introduced our legislation. I'm just going to read through what it says. The Second Amendment extends prima facie to all instruments that constitute bearable arms, even those that were not in existence at the time of the founding, and the Second Amendment's right is fully applicable to the state. We found the argument that only those arms in existence in the 18th century are protected by the Second Amendment, not only merely wrong, but bordering on frivolous. First, the relative dangerousness of a weapon is irrelevant when the weapon belongs to a class of arms commonly used for lawful purposes. The reference is Heller. Let's see. Second, even in a case where dangerousness might be relevant, the Supreme Judicial Court test sweeps far too broadly. Heller defines the arms covered by the Second Amendment to include anything that a man wears for his defense or takes into his hands or ushereth. I gotta give it for Scalia. The man could come up with some interesting words. Useth in wrath to cast or strike another. Under the decision below, however, virtually every covered arm would qualify as dangerous. Were there any doubt at this point, one need only look at the court's first example of dangerous per se weapons, firearms. If Heller tells us anything, if it is that firearms cannot be categorically prohibited just because they are dangerous. Let's see, and again, it gets into the stun gun aspect of it. And I think I'll just go that far. Again, I'm reading from Massachusetts, not exactly the bastion of Second Amendment rights and things of that nature, but that was their general interpretation of Heller. And a more contemporary, just dealing with stun guns, not necessarily, again, the functionality in the Massachusetts assault weapons ban, I'm just going to keep saying it. I don't believe that the Supreme Court has adjudicated any assault weapons ban that is as restrictive as the one we have before us. And okay. I mean, I'm sure I see Representative Knight down there shaking his hands because I know he's much better at this than I am. So we'll go ahead and let him go.
I don't see a hand raised, so maybe he's.
Well, if I'm through the chair?
Yes, sure.
The way this works is that the Supreme Court doesn't say this is what we'll do and then the states legislate. The states legislate and then somebody is aggrieved, files a lawsuit, and it works up. And the Supreme Court decides to take the case or not take the case. And the way you find out if something's constitutional or not is you pass a law, and if somebody sues, you see what they say. And there are all kinds of advocacy groups in our country who know that. Like, every time I turn around, it seems like some other state is passing a complete ban on abortion in order to get the case in front of the Supreme Court so they can test the new makeup. I can say this without devolving into a tit for tat on what this law holds or this law holds or that doesn't, or that law has. Connecticut has banned assault weapons. Massachusetts has banned assault weapons. New York has banned assault weapons. New Jersey, Maryland, California, Hawaii, and the District of Columbia have all banned assault weapons. I personally have read the decisions from Massachusetts and the decision in Massachusetts upholding the ban in the First Circuit, and I believe I've seen, although I haven't read, the New York I think there's a New York decision as well, and I'm sure other people who are more up on the case law can tell me if there's more decisions. But that's a ton of states where the ban is active and ongoing. So we can do this. The law that is in front of you today as a proposed law is modeled on the New Jersey law, and it has some relation to the initial assault weapons ban, the federal ban in the 90s, which I know, I believe was good law until the Congress let it sunset. So we're going to, if we have a vote and it passes, and it goes up, we'll figure it out. We'll see if it works. This is a good swing at it to try to balance the rights that Heller guarantees, right, that it's in the Second Amendment and Heller confirms, with the concern that most of us have for gun violence in Rhode Island.
Any more questions for the witness? If there are none, then I don't see any. Then I'll move on to the first person in the opposition side, Frank Sakocha. Frank, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
You got 3 minutes, bud.
All right, thank you. My name is Frank Sakocho. I am the president of the NRA in Rhode Island. I am an attorney licensed in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and the federal courts. I am also the attorney currently right now that is suing the state of Rhode Island on the stun gun case in federal court. I am also an attorney that is suing the state of Rhode Island in the Rhode Island Supreme Court under denial of a concealed carry weapons permit. Pretty much every pro-gun bill that's out there in front of you today, I wrote or I modified for you. So I would be happy to take questions on any one of the bills that's out there today. But since I only have 3 minutes, I'm going to focus on House Bill 5555, the school bill. I can tell you this bill for years has come out. It is absolutely a solution looking for a problem. In 1990, our own Attorney General added this specific exemption to Rhode Island law, allowing individuals who have a CCW to be able to go on school grounds. Since that time, approximately 30 years have passed. Not a single incident has happened where a concealed carry weapons holder has gone on a school ground and shot any children. So this panel needs to understand that the number of Rhode Island CCW holders, you need to know the number. This is what this bill does. There are only approximately 4,000 Rhode Island residents who have a concealed carry weapons permit, and with a population of about approximately 1 million, do the math. Less than 0.5% of people in Rhode Island have a concealed carry weapons permit. So just to recap what this bill actually does, 0.5% of the population, which is not a problem, you're law-abiding citizens who the past 30 years haven't done anything wrong, that's who you're trying to make criminal if they go on to a school ground. Now, legally, I want to make sure everybody on the panel is aware of this. This is not a loophole in the law. It's a specific exemption in the law. And for the women and feminists that are out there listening, this creates a loophole. And let me explain to you why. Suppose you have a domestic violence victim who actually does say, I'm going to be independent, I'm going to be in charge of my own security. She goes out and she gets a concealed carry weapons permit. This creates a loophole where now the perpetrator or the predator will actually know exactly when she will be disarmed. In addition to that, this bill creates a bigger problem. You're going to be leaving a firearm in an unattended vehicle while the individual goes into a school. I don't know where the police chief's heads are on this one. They think it's safer to leave a firearm in a car unattended than to have an individual who's trained, proficient, who actually is licensed to carry it to keep it on their person. You actually have to unload it and then load it back again when you're done. And the police department, their issue on this is they like to say, well, in the event something happens, active shooter, we want to know, we don't know if it's a good guy or a bad guy. Here's the answer, very simple. All the police have to do is training, which means if you're a CCW holder and you're on school grounds as an active shooter, you are required to shelter in place unless you are directly engaged.
All right, Frank, that's time's up, and I think Dr. Covesi has a question for you.
Frank, a couple of things. First of all, across the country, have there been any shootings regarding this type of scenario with a carry permit individual creating any violence in the schools?
Not to my knowledge, going into school grounds and actually shooting children, no, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So again, as you said earlier, this is a solution looking for a problem. The other thing I see in some other testimony that I wanted to ask you, because you brought this up first, is there any part of this legislation, any part of the wording in 5555 that has to do with federal law? Is it reflecting any federal law?
Yes, what it does is brings into effect a certain section of the federal law, which means any type of federal law enforcement, either they're active or retired, are also now exempt under this. So somebody that we don't know under in federal law can now be allowed to walk onto a school grounds with this. And anytime federal law changes, the Rhode Island legislature has no control over it. So basically you're allowing, when you pull in federal law, you're allowing the federal government to change Rhode Island law for you. Usually not a very good thing, nothing that you want, because the laws for the legislature here are supposed to be representative of the people here, not the federal government.
So you're saying that's problematic on its face?
Correct, because they can change it and you have no control over it. If they just reference a section of the law, if the government changes the federal law, it now changes Rhode Island law without having to go through the legislature.
Well, I don't support the law, obviously. I don't support this bill, but I would imagine then that would be something for legal counsel to make a note on, if anything, if this bill were to the chair, if this bill were to find some life after tonight's hearing, I think that's something that should definitely be addressed.
I think Tim Williamson's taken note of that.
One other thing, Representative Place talked about earlier the statistics, and now again, through the chair, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, all the bills are in place, so his testimony, he chose 555, but we can ask him about other bills.
Sure.
Okay. Just want to go along with the rules. So, with regard to, something Representative Place said earlier about the mass shootings being, and again, this may not be exactly what he said, and the chairman and others can correct me, that it was a rare event. Okay. We have, I'm sure, statistics in this country about episodes of violence. We have statistics in this country regarding murder, etc. And there are areas in this country that have a great deal of gun violence on a regular basis, a weekly basis, a weekend basis. Okay, do we have statistics? Do you have statistics on those incidents of violence across the country? Could you send that to this committee?
I can, but you have to actually qualify what is under a mass shooting, because if you look at where the statistics come from.
I'm not talking about a mass shooting. I'm talking about other incidents of gun violence, because it isn't just a mass shooting that I'm sure the intention is to, I'm sure the primary intention, of course, is not to have a terrible incident of that nature. But we have episodes across the country, areas across the country that are endemic with gun violence, be it maiming or murder or what have you. Do you have those statistics across the country about how many murders there are by firearms specifically?
Yes, they're very readily available. The FBI puts together statistics every year, and you can actually go get very specific of where the incidence of gun violence occurs. And all across the country, the FBI reports for the last 10, 15 years pinpoint that most of the gun violence comes from inner cities. That's where it's coming from. The outer areas, more rural areas, there is almost none. So it all actually comes from the inner cities, and the FBI reports actually break it down very well. So we can get you the information on.
Could you send that to this committee? I'd like to see those statistics.
You got to narrow it down. How many years? What do you want? Because there's a wealth of information.
Why don't we go back 20?
Okay. All right.
Okay. Any further questions of Frank? Seeing none, we'll go to the next witness, which is on the support side, Captain Derek Borick of the Rhode Island State Police. Captain, you're on the air.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I've been a member of the Rhode Island State Police for the past 25 years, 18 years on the tactical team and tactical team commander, and still oversee that team today, as well as the firearms program for 9 years, and I currently oversee them. And I'm also the chairman of the school safety committee. I'm here to speak with you today and to support several of the bills today. The first one being H5553, safe storage of weapons. The state police is in support of that, utilizing the common sense approach. It's imperative that we secure our weapons to ensure that criminals cannot obtain them illegally to commit criminal acts. More importantly, we want to ensure that these weapons do not get in the hands of children who could potentially harm themselves for weapons that are not stored in a safe location. Bill H554. We know that if someone intends to harm a large group of individuals, an active shooter, they are capable of more loss of life and serious bodily injury if they have a large capacity magazine in their weapon. By limiting the number of rounds in a weapon, you could limit the amount of loss of life and serious bodily injury. If someone is shooting at people and has to change a magazine, that is a potential opportunity, a moment when someone can attack that shooter to stop him or her from those actions. It's up to the legislators to decide what the capacity of the magazines should be. Possession of weapons on the school grounds, Bill H555. As the chairman of the school safety committee, also, my concern is you have individuals, whether it be teachers, principals, or custodians, who don't have the level of training that law enforcement actually had. A lot of these people have never had individual training, whether it be shoot, don't shoot scenarios, target acquisition, stressful situations, which law enforcement does every year. Our concern is law enforcement, if we go into a school during an active shooter event, these individuals with guns, whether it be teachers, principals, or anyone else in the schools, would not recognize a law enforcement officer and put us in grave danger. And that's a major concern that we have during an active shooter situation. And more of a concern is, what about weapons retention? In law enforcement, we train yearly on weapons retention, keeping a weapon on our person. Our concern is if a teacher brings a weapon into a school, that's going to be a weapon for every student in that school, because they're not going to have the proper techniques to ensure that that weapon is taken off of their person. Loaded weapons in public, H5969. I have personally been a part and the instant commander of many of our First Amendment rallies, especially at the State House. And it's always been a huge concern of us that individuals come out carrying long rifles or shotguns could be a grave threat to anyone. That puts law enforcement and the public in a grave danger, not knowing what the intent was of those individuals carrying those weapons. We have had some great civil unrest at these rallies, especially at the State House, and especially in downtown Providence, and I think that individuals could carry rifles in public would be a great security concern to all involved.
Captain, you got to wrap up.
I'm wrapped up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Captain Borick? Yes, Representative Norrie.
Captain, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your service. I think I've met you once or twice. I'm not quite sure. Just a quick question. So, as the incident commander at all these rallies, have you ever had any incidents where the Rhode Island State Police or any other local agency that was assisting Capitol Police, etc., where any of the concealed carry permit holders who were at these rallies were taken into custody or arrested for a gun violation?
No, we have not.
Have you ever had any incidences at any of these rallies where there were actually people carrying any long guns?
We have not actually seen that, no.
Thank you, and thank you for your questions.
Well, yes, Minority Leader Filippi, rather, I apologize.
That's okay. Thank you, Chairman. Hi, Captain. Thank you very much for your testimony. We were trying to discern over the past couple hours from this hearing when the last time a so-called assault rifle was used in a criminal offense in Rhode Island. Do you know?
For a criminal offense, I think Providence would be able to address that. Providence Police Department. I know they have incidents, and I don't want to speak on their behalf, of actually individuals with assault rifles spraying into cars and stuff, and I don't know if they actually had any shootings involved in assault rifles.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Dave.
Hey, Captain. Representative David Place. In your career as a law enforcement officer, any of the, let's see, the big, I'll call them the big three, the big two actually, the high capacity magazine ban and the assault weapons ban. In your career, have you ever found a situation where a crime would not have been committed if these laws were in place?
Have not, well, I talk on the, I don't have a specific case. I know as a SWAT team member for, like I said, 18 years going through doors with arrest warrants and search warrants on dangerous individuals, we are seeing more of a threat of the high-capacity magazines and rifles that these individuals are possessing. But I have not had specific to what your question.
Right. So, just going back to your language, when you're issued your M4 or M16, what is the standard magazine that is issued to you?
We have a 30-round capacity magazine.
So, so would you define it as standard? I mean, that's this. I mean, I understand 100-round magazines and things like that, but again, the 30 round is the standard magazine that is not only issued to, but also sold with the firearms, correct?
That's correct.
Any further questions? Yes, Edie.
Thank you, Chairman. Captain, can you tell us the approximate delay time if a person were being attacked in their home and their gun was safely stored, locked? How long would it be? How long would it take to make the gun usable?
Well, if the person leaves it in a locked storage container, loaded, ready to go, depends on how far that is away from their individual, how quickly can they get to it, and more importantly, if they're in fear for their life, are they going to have the skills and knowledge to get into that safe to protect themselves?
Thank you.
Dave, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, Edie.
The time would be probably just seconds longer than to take them to get across the room to where the gun was, assuming that the gun wasn't in their hands.
Correct.
At the moment that they perceive the
Yeah, I don't want to put an exact number, depending on how close that safe is to you.
Yep.
Yes.
And the safe could be openable with a key so that it wasn't a matter of a nervous person trying to manage a combination lock.
It could be that, or it could be a lot of them are touchpads, or simply a 4-digit touchpad, and you just put a certain code that you've stored for that weapon.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Captain, if you could briefly describe for us the state police's policy and guidance on the storage of your firearms overnight. Could you describe that for me, please?
In what aspect do you mean? I'm not sure I understand the question.
All right, so the state police have a specific policy that addresses the short-term storage of firearms, whether it be if you're going to a courtroom, a lockup, or even if you're just storing the firearm overnight in your home.
Yes.
Could you briefly describe the process you go through from the time you unholster your weapon until you place it into the storage container?
Sure. Go back to my residence, like you said, unholster my weapon and just store it into my safe that's located in my house. And I wake up in the morning, I take it out, and I go to work.
Do you fully clear that firearm?
Do not. No, I do not.
Could you
We, by policy, do not have to clear your firearm.
Could you explain why?
Because if we need that weapon, it's going to take that much more time to load your weapon, to rack the slide, and make it a serviceable weapon.
Well, Captain, I agree with you. I may get you in trouble on this. I agree to that point as well. But the emphasis on why not to clear or to remove the round from the chamber and the state police policy is for safety purposes, in that you do not have a clearing barrel to safely clear the weapon into. So to avoid accidental discharges in the clearing process, you leave the round in the chamber.
Not necessarily. We don't have to use a clearing barrel. You use it in a safe location. It could be outside in your backyard, into the ground, not by any houses or anything, any danger around you. So that's not necessarily true.
But so, granted, okay, so I'll give you the point on the specific clearing barrel, but again, the emphasis on the reason why, at least when the policy, when I read it, as it exists today, is for safety purposes, and they ask that you not clear the round because of the likelihood of an accidental discharge while you're doing so.
Not necessarily. I do know that there are troopers on the job who will, to go above and beyond because they have children in their home, they will clear their weapon every night when they go home.
Well, we don't want to debate the state police gun clearing policy. Representative Jason Knight, I know you don't know anything about gun clearing.
I don't know anything about gun clearing. That's not true. I've cleared hundreds of guns.
Oh, wow.
Captain, I know you're not familiar with every single criminal case here in Rhode Island, but I'm going to ask you if you've heard of the case of Jaquan Parker, who was just with the AG's office in P1 2020-2696 AG. Have you heard of that case?
If you familiarize me, but not off the top of my head.
That was the case where Jaquan was convicted, and in his gun crime, he fired 22 rounds from a semi-automatic rifle towards the driveway at his home, missing 2 individuals who were standing by. Now, he managed to only hit some buildings, but that was a time when it appears that an assault weapon was used. I'm just circling back around to the questions you had before about whether or not you're aware of assault weapons being used in crimes in Rhode Island. In addition to Jaquan, in just the 2020 case, in 2002, 2 defendant gang members shot 223 rounds from an AR-15. 1 was killed, 1 was paralyzed. And in 2014, at the Chad Brown housing projects, there were shots fired from an AK with 7.62 rounds. So, Captain, I know that you know, and I know you can't pull every case off the top of your head, but those are examples of when assault rifles have been used in crimes in Rhode Island.
Yes, thank you.
I think the counselor needs to remind, I asked a very specific question. Would any of these laws have prevented a crime from taking place? My counterpoint to, so again, that was my question, not were they used, because my counterpoint to everything you just said, were those firearms lawfully in the possession of those individuals at the time that those incidents took place? You know, where did they have criminal records that would have barred them from carrying? So I'm not worried about that, but again, my specific question to the captain was, based on the 2 laws or 2 bills that I referenced, the so-called assault weapons ban and magazine ban, if there had been a crime that he knows of that would have been prevented if these laws had been on the books at the time that they were committed.
Yep. Okay. If there are no other questions, oh, yes. Leader Filippi.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for indulging me again, Captain. I have a brief question. I'm having a hard time with the safe storage bill. And on line 10, I think that's on page 1, it says, for purposes of this section, such weapon shall not be deemed stored if kept, if carried, or here's the operative line, or under the control of the owner, or other lawfully authorized user. So I'm just trying to understand, obviously if the firearm is in a holster on your person, it's under your control. I'm just having a hard time thinking, so if someone is asleep and the firearm is under their pillow, right, or under their mattress, is that under their control? I know this is something you guys sometimes have to deal with when determining, who to charge in a car with possession of a firearm that's under a seat. I'm just trying to figure out when someone would have to lock a firearm up, particularly, potential victim of domestic violence who has a firearm to protect herself or himself, and they're sleeping and, they want to have that firearm close by. There's no kids in the house. When they're sleeping, do they have to lock it up under this proposed bill, or could they have it within arm's reach?
So that's something that I would refer to the Attorney General's office on that.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe I wasn't expecting a clear answer because it's a real kind of amorphous concept.
Sure.
You made me feel not stupid because I don't really understand it. So I appreciate it, Captain, very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, have a good night.
Representative Norrie.
You too.
Leader Filippi, great question, because when I read it, I actually kind of paused on the control issue, knowing that search and seizure, span of control, right, that when you're, as a police officer, you're going into someone's residence. So I agree with you, span of control, right, within that reach. I would say that that's definitely an issue that could be addressed.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Captain, I just want to go ahead and thank you for coming in here today. I'm confident you're doing the duty as has been provided to you. So I want to thank you for coming in here today and taking us on in these situations.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to the committee. Everyone have a good night.
Thanks,
I agree.
Captain.
Thank you.
Next witness is Mike O'Neill. Welcome, Michael. You're on the air. You got 3 minutes, and then you might be asked some questions.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Mike O'Neill. I'm the Vice President of Rhode Island Second Amendment Coalition. A couple things I'd like to talk about. The school bill, as it was said, it was been in the last 6 years. We've asked for better security in our schools because I keep hearing the statements of we want to keep our children safe. I keep asking for metal detectors, camera systems, better security, and that's never included in the bill. So until we're serious about keeping our children safe, that's basically what we need. On the other side, a comment that was made that there's only 5 states that allow carry on school grounds. That's incorrect. The state of Texas has trained 162 school districts that where teachers, if they would like the choice to carry, they've been trained by law enforcement and by the NRA as far as in firearms training. So in Ohio allows the same thing where the schools, the teachers have a choice and they have their own program as far as training their teachers to keep our children safe. Florida has hired ex-veterans to actually do security at the schools in Florida. A lot of states are going the different direction, and that is taking security very serious. I believe that Rhode Island is in a lapse as far as security for our schools. All these bills together that the Attorney General have been putting in ask for extreme penalties. I find it kind of hypocritical that the fact that we haven't received anything on the reporting bill as far as how the gun charges are being handled makes me believe that he is dropping gun charges and plea bargaining with the criminals, but yet on the law-abiding side with the citizens, he's actually asking for more enhanced penalties. And one thing that bothers me the most is that this is going to affect our community, and it's also going to affect lower-income communities. I grew up in Pawtucket. I lived there for 42 years. I've lived in Warwick the last 14 years. And it's going to basically really hurt the Latino community, the African American community, as far as when these bills pass and they get into trouble, and it's you need an expensive lawyer when it comes to a firearm charge to get rid of it. And, it could be accidental. I believe that this is really trying to entrap law-abiding citizens, and it's really unfair on the process and how this is going. There's a lot of misinformation today. One example is the AR-15 was designed by Armalite Rifle. That firearm started being sold in 1958 to the civilians. The military took it on in 1964 and made it full auto, which we're not allowed to own.
All right, Mike, time's up. You got any questions? Doc? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you for your testimony today, Mike. I have just a couple of quick questions for you. So, in your capacity with the NRA, am I also correct in assuming that you've helped individuals qualify for their concealed carry permit?
Yes, ma'am.
And so how many rounds would you say, or how often would the average person that has a CCW permit actually shoot?
So the way the amount of training that I have had myself, I am a instructor, NRA instructor. I am also a chief range safety officer with the NRA. I do multiple carry classes over the years. I try and train in a carry class once every 2 or 3 months. And I do a lot of exercises at home that don't require live firing. And then also I'm at the range probably once a week, and I will practice my techniques for carrying. Training is the most important thing that I believe in any firearm owner.
So it's my understanding that in order for firearms training to be effective, that it needs to be conducted regularly. That makes sense with any kind of training. But in my readings, what I have come to understand is that the average police department only trains once, maybe twice per year, and less than 15 hours per officer. Is that your experience as well?
I can say yes, ma'am, because we have, I belong to Highland Rod and Gun Club, and we have Customs and Border Patrol. They come up to use our range. I believe Providence had come up to our range because their range was shut down for a little while, and it's usually just twice a year. I don't know the other departments that I believe have their own ranges as far as like how often that they train, but you're probably correct in that statement.
Well, based on my reading and your testimony, and this is my opinion only, it seems to me that the schools would be safer with someone who has their CCW permit, who has been training regularly, as opposed to someone who might be in law enforcement and training no more than 15 hours a year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Doc, you had a question, and I'll go to Jason Knight next.
How are you this afternoon, Mike?
Oh, good, sir.
Mike, I want to turn my attention to 5556. I want to ask you a question. Many times in this chamber, I've been here long enough, and I'm sure members of Judiciary have been here long enough to hear how, especially from the ACLU, we're only codifying federal law into state law, like it's not a big deal. What right now is the federal status of registering assault weapons?
As of right now, federal law prohibits any registration of firearms, and Rhode Island law also does not allow registration of firearms.
Okay. And I know we've already heard about how a minority of states have had some laws on the books regarding this, whether or not their constitutionality is. I'm not going to debate that.
So there is one case, Representative, that Colorado just took up at the Colorado Supreme Court, and their decision is that banning a AR-15 or a high-capacity magazine is unconstitutional in the state. So that assault weapons ban has been made illegal.
What other states have gun registries?
I believe New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut. and I believe California, I'm not sure.
Are these registries for all firearms or just?
Yes, sir.
For all
yes,
firearms?
I believe, so I know, I can speak on New York, definitely has every single firearm that you own in the state of New York is actually connected to your driver's license. So when a police officer runs your license, say when you got pulled over for speeding, they know how many weapons and what types they are, and it's attached to your driver's license. So.
And the Attorney General's bill on 5556 would require a registration, correct?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Dave, you got a question?
I wasn't done.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I did say Jason next. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, Doc.
You know the history of registrations, gun registries in history, correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you agree that according to history, the first step to confiscation is registration?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Jason.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hi, Representative Knight. How are you?
I'm good. Are you referring with the... now can you hear me? Sorry about that.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Are you referring, when you talk about the Colorado case, is that the case where the judge knocked down Boulder's ordinance? Or is it something else?
It was recently done a month ago. I'm waiting to see how we get a copy of the decision. But I believe it was statewide. They had an assault weapons ban probably 7 to 9 years ago, and it was overturned statewide, I believe. That's how I read it in the article.
All right, because
I haven't seen the decision yet.
I'm looking at a Colorado Sun newspaper. We'll have to figure this out because the headline says that the Colorado Supreme Court upholds the state's law banning large capacity gun magazines. But I also see that there was a state judge that blocked a broader ordinance from Boulder. So we'll have to figure out what exactly happened over there. Hey, I just wanted to take a moment and go back in your testimony to when you talked about the AG and what he's doing with gun cases. And as someone who's in the courthouse every day, I can tell you that Attorney General Norona's position on gun cases is really firm. The conversation with the judge and the prosecutor typically starts at jail, and it's an effort to go down from there for the defense lawyer and for the defendant. So for what it's worth, I know you don't have any stats, but I'm here to anecdotally tell you that they are treating gun cases very seriously. And the Superior Court has 2 judges who almost exclusively handle gun cases, and both of them are very, very firm with gun cases, Judge Krause and Judge Rogers in Providence County. So for what it's worth, that's some color on your testimony.
Any other questions? Tom? Yes. And then Justine. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. Mike, good afternoon. Thank you for your testimony. Can you talk about 5730 for me, the reciprocity bill with Mass, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, and why that would be an important bill to pass?
So that particular bill would be very beneficial. In my case, I have a Rhode Island permit, I have a Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. So I'm allowed to carry in the 6 New England states because Vermont and Maine don't require you to have a permit. But as of the state of Massachusetts, under their law, you have to have a FID or which is just a firearms card that you can own a firearm, or I believe it's a Class A license, which is a carry license that you can carry a firearm concealed. Under the law of Massachusetts, any proponent of a bullet, whether it's the casing, the primer, the powder, the bullet, you have to have an FID card in the state of Massachusetts to possess those items. So if I were to travel from Rhode Island into Massachusetts and I had a spent shell casing in the back of my car that came out of my range bag by accident, and I didn't have a permit in Massachusetts, I can be arrested because of that component. So I have a job, I work at Logan, I have credentials, I have clearances, or I would lose my job instantly from that arrest. So I have to have my Massachusetts permit to protect my job. And right now, it's really, the non-resident permit in Massachusetts is once a year I have to submit my paperwork. It's not like Rhode Island where we have 4 years. A resident in Mass has 5 years, but I'm only allowed 1 year, so I have to keep doing my paperwork over every 6 months. And that it's really, it's a toll every year to see, the status of your permit, so.
Justine, you have a question?
Thank you, Mike.
I do, thank you. I do, thank you, Chairman. Hi, Mike, this is Justine Caldwell. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. I meant to ask this question to Frank, but I forgot, and I understand you're also a leader. Did you say you're the Vice President of the Second Amendment Club?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to make an assumption that you own some of the weapons that are, that these pieces of legislation would affect. And so I'm wondering if, as a leader in your community, that if these bills were to pass in the House and Senate and become law in Rhode Island, if you intended to comply with them, and that if you would recommend that your members would also comply with them.
Honestly, we would file in federal court the next day and we would get an injunction.
And then if you failed and we prevailed in court, would you comply with the laws then?
I can't answer that. I really can't answer that because you look at Connecticut, they put in their registration, and they said there was around 250,000 AR-15s in the state, and what happened was only 20,000 people to this day have registered firearms.
Okay,
I can't
so
give you that answer.
that's outside the scope of my question, but the point is you are going to cherry pick the laws in which you follow is what I'm going to take your answer to be.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I can't give you an answer to that what the firearms community is going to do.
Okay. Doc.
With all due respect to my colleague, Representative Caldwell, I think that's a bit of an unfair question, and I'm going to tell you why. We're talking about a law that is deeply ingrained not only in the Constitution but also in the American psyche, taking one's protection away from them. Okay, I don't believe you'll ever achieve that if you tried. There would be a tremendous backlash if you tried to do that. Now, and you also have to realize that there's a tradition in this country to protest vehemently against what is considered unjust laws. Just because a law is passed and put on the books doesn't mean it's a good bill. That just means that a certain amount of people in a certain legislature thought so. There's been plenty of examples in history in this country and other countries where unjust laws have been what's the word I'm looking for appropriately? X'd out because they were felt that they were unjust, and you had uprisings of all sorts. So, if anything would conceivably cause some type of an uprising, this type of legislation would. That's my opinion.
Briefly. Okay, if there are no more questions, thanks. Sherry.
Yes, thank you. Chairman, I don't have a question. I just had a statement to make.
Sure.
I do know that some people in my district have stated, to answer some of what Rep. Caldwell is saying, to her question, a lot of people are saying they're going to leave the state of Rhode Island. And when that happens, when you get mass numbers of people leaving the state of Rhode Island, you're going to lose tax dollars. This is a major move that we need to really think about before we pass this type of legislation. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. The next witness is Commissioner Stephen Parry from the City of Providence, the Director of Public Safety. Steve?
Hello? Yeah.
Good to hear from you. You got 3 minutes, and then people might want to ask you some questions.
All right. I'll be on a timer.
Fire away. The floor's yours. Steve?
Yes.
Floor's yours.
Am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
Thank you to the House Judiciary. My name is Stephen Parry. I'm the Commissioner of Public Safety for the City of Providence. I'm here to testify on several bills that are before you. I'll begin with the assault weapons, a bill that's been discussed now for nearly a decade. And being in law enforcement for nearly 40 consecutive years, and seeing the change in which we have seen on the street, assault weapons are named precisely because they are not only a deadly weapon, but they pose a threat to not only our citizens, but our police officers. We have had to change our method in weaponry because of being outgunned on the street. And by banning and restricting assault weapons will make not only our law enforcement community, but the community at large safer. Why do I say that and not apply to, all handguns? Because assault weapons have a velocity 3 and 4 times that of a handgun. They'll go through bulletproof vests. They'll cause a great challenge to our law enforcement officers that is of great concern. Now, over the years, we talked about how many assault weapons are here and what is the threat against the public and our law enforcement. And I always say, even though we haven't had a mass shooting, we should not wait for one. Assault weapons are made and should be used by our military, understanding they're in our community and we have to manage this. So real quickly, as I'm coming up on 2 minutes, from the 10 years in which there was a federal prohibition, we saw a decrease by 70% of mass shootings in this country. So the limitations of these kinds of weapons, along with high-capacity magazines that feed these weapons and able to shoot bullets into these type of weapons, cause a great concern. Secure guns, the piece of legislation 5553, for me, securing a gun in the house, whether you're a law enforcement officer or the community, should be a no-brainer for the safety of everyone, and particularly if your house is getting broken into. Talked about open carry. I support that, and I fully support banning guns in schools.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think that there's some questions. Representative Casamaro.
Hey, Commissioner, it's Julie Casamaro. How are you?
Hello, Rep. Good, thank you.
The threat that law enforcement sees from assault rifles, is that from law-abiding citizens?
It's not from law-abiding citizens that we see as a threat, but having those weapons out in our community poses a threat because they get in the hands of the wrong people.
Thank you.
Dave, go ahead.
So, Commissioner, what you're saying is the majority of incidences where you come across assault weapons in your daily course of your duty is by individuals that are it's already against the law for them to possess. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in your time, I'm going to ask the same question that I asked the captain from the state police.
Sure.
With the focusing on the assault weapons ban and the high-capacity magazine ban, have you come across a crime in your career in which, if these laws had been in place, that crime would not have taken place?
Perhaps with tougher laws creates a behavioral change. So I can't predict what, if this law was in place, what would it prevent? Like any laws, it tightens up and provides for greater safety for our community.
Any other questions? Jason, you got a question?
I do. Hi, Commissioner. How are you?
Hi, Rep. Good, thank you.
Hey, could you, a little while ago, we heard some back and forth regarding the qualifications of a CCP holder in a school active shooter situation versus a police officer in the active shooter situation. And the point was made that the CCP might be better prepared to handle that because they apparently do more training time than cops do. Do you have anything to say on that, or perhaps you could give us your perspective about police officers training in an active shooter situation?
Sure. So, it varies, of course, and it varies for people that have a concealed carry permit. Some may be really good, and I heard a little bit of the previous testimony that they go and practice every week, and they practice, at home, and that's wonderful. But the majority doesn't, and the majority of police officers do not shoot weekly or practice that frequently. But I can tell you, in my experience, training under pressure is what law enforcement does. And so it's easy to do it in a scenario where you're proficient with your firearm, but doing it under a scenario in which is posed to you whether or not you pull your firearm and shoot under stress in different scenarios is much different.
Thank you.
Justine.
Hi, Commissioner. It's Justine
Hello.
Caldwell. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to ask, so in the past few years in Rhode Island, we have passed several bills to help curb gun violence. We passed our ban on ghost guns last year. We passed our red flag bill. Do you feel like these bills that we are passing here in the legislature are helping you guys in law enforcement in your efforts to keep Rhode Islanders safe? We call those bills effective tools in your toolbox.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. We have and we will continue to see ghost guns. And with passing these laws, without a doubt, help in combating crime here in the state of Rhode Island. I thank you for that. And I was part of the red flag bill, and I heard all those arguments how much it's going to hurt law-abiding citizens and taking the guns out of the hands of people that are law-abiding. And nothing can be further from the truth. It has worked remarkably. Keeping those guns in those scenarios when we can take action and not hope that the person comes back and gets access to the gun. So it does help. This isn't going to solve our gun problem in America, but all these bills help in keeping our community and our law enforcement officers safe.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Chairwoman McEntee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioner. It's Representative Carol McEntee.
Good afternoon, Representative.
In your testimony, after you were asked questions, you said that most of the gun violence is done by people who are illegally possessing that weapon. But I also heard you say that if we had less, with these bills, with prohibiting, with banning the ability to buy these weapons and limiting the magazine capacities, that this will take them off the streets, which I infer you to mean that the less amount of these weapons and high-capacity magazines on the street, the less likely the people who are illegally obtaining them will less likely be able to obtain them. Are you saying that, or I hope I'm clear.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So if you limit, access and restrict, availability, then of course it's going to restrict the ability for those criminals to access those weapons. So all these measures help in gun violence here in the city of Providence and the state, and it's not going to solve it, but these measures can improve safety, whether it's in schools, whether it's drug dealing on the street. It makes it more difficult for criminals to get access to these deadly assault weapons.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay.
Thank you.
Representative Place.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner Pear, in your experience, you'd referenced the ghost gun, the success with the ghost gun bill. Would you say that the ghost, when you've recommended prosecution of the ghost gun bill, that it was the primary charge, or had a crime already taken place and you're able to, when you say add to your toolbox or have a tool in your toolbox, where you're able to increase the charges on a crime that had already been committed just because the ghost gun bill was in place?
Both. Both. We just had a case when they were manufacturing ghost guns, and without that statute in place, we had nothing to charge. So both is my answer. We're seeing more and more. We saw it on the West Coast years ago, and I'm thankful that this legislature took action because we're seeing it more and more, and it's a tool that you've provided us to prosecute.
All right, don't see any other questions from the members. Thank you very much, Steve. Good to hear from you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
If I just wanted to clarify something I said earlier when I was debating regarding how embedded the right to bear arms is in America, and I talked about unjust laws. I believe the phrase I was looking for was civil disobedience against what is perceived as unjust laws. So I was kind of tripping over my tongue on that, but that's what I was thinking of. We have a history in this country of that.
That's how it started.
Civil rights, every movement you can think of. So
We didn't want to pay the T-tax, so that's how it all started. Okay, the next witness is Brenda Jacob. Brenda, you're on the air. You got 3 minutes, and then there's probably going to be some questions.
Okay, thank you. My name is Brenda Jacob, and I'm a lobbyist for Rhode Island Revolver and Rifle. I am testifying today to be the voice for thousands of Rhode Island constituents. Many of the bills before you affect them directly. The data is used from mostly other states and crimes that the citizens I represent have not committed, nor do they intend to. Unfortunately, common sense gun reform has become a lucrative business with over $1.3 million funneled into this state by out-of-state interests. There are 155,000 new firearms purchased in the state in the last 5 years. FBI reports 40% were women, 58% were African American and minorities, who under these new laws will be made into criminals or need to alter or surrender their property. As we celebrate Women's History Month, I feel it is important to point out that women have the most to lose with this proposed legislation. 25% of women purchase for self-protection. 70% say owning a gun is essential for personal freedom. The magazine ban alters the safe operation of many firearms that we already own by changing their manufacturer's specifications. Many legislators have stated today that manufacturers make magazines and firearms that are compliant and that you are not taking away our guns. But if these bills pass, you are telling thousands of Rhode Islanders that you want us to modify, register, permit, and surrender firearms that we already legally obtained and legally own. There are also significant economic impacts and environmental impacts that affects all Rhode Islanders in our state by the revenue generated through the Pittman-Robertson money and through the 130 small businesses that depend on the firearms industry in this state. I have submitted written testimony listing the bills I oppose and support. I urge you to hold these bills and allow legislators to be informed on the data that is specific to Rhode Islanders. I have submitted a petition with over 10,000 signatures by law-abiding constituents, hundreds in each of your districts, and they are asking you to please hear the voice of the firearm community. Thank you.
Any questions of the witness? Yes. Representative Casimiro.
Hi, Brenda. Thank you for joining us today. Do you have any idea the financial impact this will have on the state of Rhode Island if these laws are passed?
Yeah, it's significant because NSSF did a study on the economic impact, which has to do with jobs, tourism, ammunition, firearm purchases, and all of the property taxes and employment taxes, sales taxes that are put into the local economy. They estimate that at about over $11 million.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Edie.
The bills that we're hearing tonight, in total and individually, do not have the impact of outlawing the sale of all guns. They would outlaw high-capacity guns in one case and high-capacity magazines in another case, but not all guns by any means. So that figure of 11 million being the impact on the state's revenues really has to take into account what we're trying to do here and what we're likely to do, as opposed to the scare tactics of taking all guns off the market, which is it's not contemplated.
Okay, well, respectfully, I have to disagree because I know how a firearm operates, and by the definition in the bills, the definition clearly states different language, like dropping floor plate and threaded barrel, bayonet. If you understood how a firearm operates, you would understand that actually sweeps in almost every firearm into that assault weapons ban. It's not limited to just what you think is an assault weapon. The definition defines the working component of every firearm that we own. So that is why we feel that this is a complete gun ban, because by definition it is a gun ban.
Any other questions? Yes, Jason.
Hi, ma'am. My name's Jason Knight. Does a Glock pistol have a bayonet mount?
It doesn't have a bayonet mount, but it does have a drop-in floor plate.
Are you discussing the magazine?
Yes.
Okay. Is the
Because it specifically says that you have a line in that bill that specifically talks about magazines.
right? Well, there is a high capacity magazine bill on the docket tonight, and we already talked about it. We already talked about the language in that, right? So let me ask you this: does a long gun have a bayonet mount?
No, it doesn't, but a lot of them have a threaded barrel.
Okay, but do they
In fact,
all have a threaded barrel?
My son's Olympic single-shot .22 rifle has a threaded barrel, and the reason it has a threaded barrel is because we put a harmonic balancer on the end of that firearm, and that is for competition. Also, you have modified chokes that screw into shotguns. There are a lot of firearms, more than you can imagine, that actually have a threaded barrel.
Right, but my point is it's not all.
My point is 90% of them.
All right, and under this, would you agree with me that, well, I don't think you will agree with me, but every other witness that's come forth has agreed with me that nothing that we may pass that's on the docket today would interfere with someone's ability to purchase a pistol or a shotgun or a long gun for their home protection. You're the lone witness who does not agree with that.
Well, I do represent thousands of other people in this state that disagree with all of the legislation that you're trying to pass, because we understand the working components of our firearms. We know what we have in our collections, and we, by definition, know exactly how it is going to affect us and our personal property.
Okay, thank you very much.